I used to believe my life was stable, maybe not perfect, but built on something solid. Daniel and I had been married for 20 years. We raised our daughter Sophie together, built a home, endured highs and lows. He was charismatic, sharp, and the kind of man people gravitated toward. I always thought he was the center of attention because he earned it. Turns out he was just good at lying. Graduation day was supposed to be a celebration. Sophie had worked her heart out. Honors, scholarships, the whole deal. She wanted to go into law like me. Said she admired my strength. If only she knew how much of that strength I'd needed to get through the last 6 months. Everything looked picture perfect that day. My dress, his tailored suit, Sophie beaming in her cap and gown. My best friend Tina joined us. Of course, she was practically family. She was there for every birthday, holiday, and dinner party. I used to joke that she and Daniel got along better than he and I did. If only I'd paid more attention to the looks, the inside jokes, the silences. After the ceremony, we all went out to dinner at this elegant rooftop restaurant Sophie had picked. The sun was setting over the city skyline, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. Everyone was happy, proud, buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses. Then Daniel stood up. I remember the way he cleared his throat, how his fingers tapped his wine glass just enough to draw everyone's attention. I thought he was about to make a toast. Instead, he smiled this disgusting, smug little smirk and said, I wanted to make an announcement. Lisa and I are getting divorced. Silence. Forks froze midair. Glasses stopped mid-toast. My heart didn't even have time to break. It just stopped. He continued, We've grown apart. It's been coming for a long time. And I found someone who actually makes me happy. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just looked at him, watching his words bounce off the people around us. Sophie's face was pale. Her hands trembled in her lap. Guests looked around, unsure how to react. Then I turned my head to Tina. She avoided my gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then she smiled. That's when I knew. So it's you, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's sweet. Tina blinked. Daniel stammered. Lisa, don't make this into a scene. Why would I do that? I asked calmly. You picked graduation day to humiliate me in front of our daughter, our friends, our family. Why would I ever want to ruin your moment? He didn't like that. He wanted a reaction. He wanted tears. Instead, I smiled and turned to Sophie. Sweetheart, I'm sorry you had to hear it like this. But I promise, this doesn't have a define today. You earned this day, and no amount of your father's cowardice will take that from you. Daniel's jaw twitched. Tina stood up, muttered something about needing air. Sophie didn't say a word. She just looked at me, confused, hurt, and something else. Curious. I wanted to tell her everything right then, but it wasn't time, because Daniel thought this was the end of something. But it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because the clarity was finally setting in. The truth I'd suspected, ignored, then quietly investigated for the past few months had been shoved into the open like a rotten secret. Daniel thought he had blindsided me. He thought he had the upper hand. But I had already mapped the exits, checked the walls for cracks, and planned my escape. I started suspecting something was off about 6 months earlier. Daniel had become more polished, more distant. He started using cologne he hadn't worn in years. His gym visits turned into late-night strategy meetings. I asked questions. He gaslighted me, told me I was paranoid. That's when I stopped talking and started listening. The real confirmation came from Tina herself, though she didn't realize it. One night, during wine and Netflix, she accidentally referred to a conversation with Daniel that I had never mentioned to her. The way she froze after saying it told me everything. I played dumb. I always play dumb well. It's an underappreciated weapon. After that night, I started collecting. Hotel receipts, texts he forgot to delete, a suspicious second phone line I traced back to a work account. But the real jackpot was hidden in plain sight, his work laptop, password protected, but not to me. I found emails, dozens, raunchy, smug, arrogant exchanges between him and Tina, and others. She wasn't even the first, just the most persistent. But here's where it gets worse. She wasn't only sleeping with Daniel. Before him, she had a thing with Marcus, Daniel's business partner. I knew Marcus. He was sharp, private, and the kind of man who didn't tolerate fools, especially ones who jeopardized the company. I reached out to him under the guise of needing legal advice. That meeting changed everything. Marcus wasn't surprised when I told him about Daniel and Tina. He'd suspected it too. But what stunned him was hearing that Tina had accessed sensitive client files during her time with Daniel. Files that should have never left the firm's servers. That crossed a legal line. It turned out Marcus had his own axe to grind. Daniel had been cutting him out of deals, funneling funds, manipulating reports. He was charming to the world, but ruthless behind closed doors. Marcus had been documenting everything, but lacked a smoking gun. I gave it to him. Somewhere in all this, Marcus and I got close. It wasn't romantic at first, just two people trading scars. But lines blurred, nights stretched. He became someone I trusted more than anyone else. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. But I didn't get sloppy. I wasn't going to stoop to Daniel's level. This wasn't about tit for tat. This was about dismantling the version of him that the world believed. Then, as if fate had a sense of humor, Sophie overheard Daniel on the phone late one night. I wasn't home. She said he was talking about finally getting rid of the baggage and starting fresh with Tina. He laughed when he said, "Lisa won't fight me. She never does." She told me everything. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just thanked her, told her I loved her, and watched her face harden. That was the moment I knew she'd chosen a side. They thought they were winning, that I was broken, that I'd go quietly. But I was just getting started. The moment I decided to go to war, I knew I couldn't act emotionally. Daniel thrived on chaos, expected screaming matches and dramatic confrontations. He never anticipated strategy. That was his blind spot. He didn't think I had it in me to outmaneuver him. That mistake would cost him everything. First, I got a lawyer. Quietly, I chose one who specialized in high-asset divorces and financial abuse. We met discreetly, and I handed over every shred of evidence I collected. Emails, bank records, proof of his affair with Tina, and even his shady transfers between company accounts. My lawyer's eyes lit up. "He's hung himself with this," she said. I started shifting our assets. The joint accounts became a liability. So I moved half into a trust, one that Daniel couldn't touch without triggering fraud alerts. The house was under both our names, but I found a loophole in how the mortgage had been refinanced a few years ago. With Marcus's help, we isolated Daniel's financial stake and froze it pending investigation. He had no idea. Still too busy flaunting Tina around like some prize he'd won. Meanwhile, Marcus provided the internal company files Daniel thought he'd hidden well. The transactions revealed that Daniel had been siphoning bonuses through shell vendors and falsifying client billings. It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. We planned to drop that bomb at the perfect moment. But this wasn't just about legal revenge. It was personal. I began preparing the social fallout. I contacted close friends, colleagues, even some of Daniel's golf buddies. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to plant seeds. I knew people would talk once the truth surfaced, and when it did, I wanted to make sure the narrative belonged to me. Marcus and I agreed to pull back from each other publicly. Too much closeness would draw suspicion. We staged a fake falling out, enough to keep prying eyes away. Privately, we met often, meticulously building our case. He dug into Tina's past and discovered she had lied on multiple job applications, fake credentials, and even had a sealed complaint filed against her for manipulating a past client's contract. I had all the ingredients for destruction. Now I needed timing. Sophie had been quiet since the dinner. Not cold, just careful. One evening, she asked if I was okay. I told her yes, and for the first time, I asked her something back. "Would you be okay if things looked messy for a while?" She said yes. That was all I needed. Tina, in her oblivious arrogance, decided to throw a party at her place to celebrate Sophie's graduation. She invited everyone, friends, coworkers, even some of my extended family. I accepted the invitation with a smile and a thank you. Daniel thought he was rubbing salt in my wounds. But I wasn't wounded. I was sharpening knives. My lawyer finalized the last batch of paperwork. Marcus had all the documentation loaded onto a drive. I printed select evidence, just enough for the guests to digest, and tucked it into a folder labeled simply in case of emergencies. Sophie would have the honors of presenting it. The night before the party, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced my toast. No tears, no anger, just truth, wrapped in elegance and precision. They thought I was defeated, that I'd accept humiliation and vanish. But I was walking into that party not as the betrayed wife. I was walking in as the reckoning. The energy at the party was smug. Daniel acted like a man who won a prize, walking around with Tina on his arm, smiling too wide, laughing too loud. Tina played hostess, offering drinks and pretending nothing in the world had ever been messy. They didn't notice how many people were watching them instead of speaking to them, or how many side eyes they got from guests who used to be my friends too. No one knew what was coming, but they sensed something wasn't right. I kept a calm expression. I didn't drink. I didn't flinch. Every word, every movement was intentional. I waited for the right moment. Not too early to lose impact, not too late to miss the attention. Then I stood up. I raised my glass and congratulated Sophie, told her how proud I was of her strength, her integrity, her resilience. Everyone smiled and clapped. I let the silence settle before turning to Daniel. And while we're celebrating truth and achievements, I said, I think it's the perfect time to share a few truths of our own. He froze. Tina tensed. Daniel and I are indeed getting divorced, I said, but not because we grew apart. He's been cheating for years, not just with Tina. There were others, some friends, some strangers. He lied, manipulated, and even stole from our joint assets and from his own company. Whispers erupted. He tried to interrupt, but I lifted a hand. I'm not done. Then I turned to Tina. You weren't just sleeping with my husband. You were stealing confidential information from his company. Emails, client lists. You passed them to competitors illegally. And Marcus? You slept with him too, remember? You told him Daniel was your backup. Turns out you were just loyal to whoever had more power. Tina's mouth opened and closed like she was underwater. Daniel's face went pale. He stepped forward. You don't know what you're talking about. I smiled. Actually, I do. Marcus, would you? He stepped forward from the crowd, silent until then, and held up a flash drive. Everything is on here, he said. Financial fraud, corporate misconduct, wire transfers to offshore accounts, and Tina's involvement. People started filming. Some were already whispering names of lawyers. Then I handed Sophie the folder. She opened it slowly, pulling out pages, receipts, screenshots, a printed email from Daniel to Tina that said, she's weak. She won't fight back. Just smile and keep her quiet until the divorce is through. Sophie read out loud. Daniel lunged for the folder. Marcus stepped between them. Sophie didn't move. Her hands didn't shake. You said I was weak. I told him. You said I wouldn't fight, that I'd let you walk away with your dignity intact. But you misunderstood me. I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was planning. Daniel began shouting, accusing me of manipulation, of betrayal, of turning our daughter against him. She saw the truth, I said. All I did was let it speak for itself. Tina tried to sneak away, muttering something about needing to call her lawyer. Marcus followed her out, saying loudly, you're going to want one, a real one. Daniel collapsed into a chair, rubbing his temples. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble brick by brick. And then I gave him the final blow. I moved the assets, the house, the cars, the savings, everything you thought you'd walk away with. It's all in my name now. You thought you were clever. You were just sloppy. The guests were silent. No one comforted him. No one defended Tina. The illusion had cracked, and what spilled out was nothing but rot. After the party, everything moved fast. The video of my speech made its way online within hours. I didn't post it, but someone had. It went viral, not just in our circle, but beyond. Local blogs picked it up, then legal forums, then media outlets who caught wind of the corporate scandal embedded in the personal drama. Daniel's reputation crumbled in real time, and there wasn't a single thing he could do to stop it. His company launched an internal audit the next morning. Marcus submitted the flash drive directly to the board. The evidence was damning. Embezzlement, conflict of interest, client tampering, unauthorized bonuses. It was all there. They suspended Daniel indefinitely, pending further investigation. Within a week, he was fired. Tina was also exposed. Her resume lies were made public by a former colleague who'd long suspected her. Turns out, she'd been blacklisted from a previous firm for similar misconduct. When the story broke, her current employer terminated her immediately. She tried to spin it as a smear campaign, but no one was buying it. Too much truth. Too much proof. Our divorce proceedings began 2 days after the party. My lawyer shredded Daniel's defense before he could even finish reading his statement. He tried to argue that I'd orchestrated a smear to take more money in the settlement. We showed the emails, the secret accounts, the infidelity records. His case fell apart like a house of cards. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Neither was the court of public opinion. I walked away with full custody of Sophie. Daniel didn't even fight it after the court reviewed his communications. I got the house, the business shares I'd hidden away during the marriage, the savings he thought I didn't know about. All of it. He moved into a 1-bedroom rental crosstown. His lawyer dropped him after 3 weeks. He owed more in legal fees than he had in his checking account. Sophie visited him once. She told me he cried and blamed everyone but himself. He said, I poisoned her against him. She told him, you did that all by yourself. Marcus, and I didn't rush anything after that. We kept things quiet, steady. He was there when I needed to vent, to talk to a fallout, to breathe after years of pretending everything was fine. There was no need to label us. We both survived the same storm and came out on the other side, holding pieces of each other's stories. Tina left the city. Rumors say she tried to start fresh somewhere else. But every time her name pops up, the internet reminds people who she really is. The past doesn't forget, especially not when it's been broadcasted to millions. As for me, I didn't rebuild. I reinvented. I took a position at a new law firm, one where my story was an asset, not a liability. Clients came in droves. Women, mostly. People who wanted someone who wouldn't just offend them, but who understood. The truth is, Daniel did me a favor when he stood up at that dinner and tried to humiliate me. He forced my hand. He lit the match. What he didn't realize was that I'd already drenched everything in gasoline. Now, when I look back, I don't feel pain. I feel power. I wasn't destroyed. I was refined. He thought he'd walk away with everything. He didn't realize I was everything. And now, I belong to no one but myself.